All right, welcome everybody. Probably one of the widest audiences I think we've probably ever had from the planet, but coming to you live. This is not recorded, so know that we are live with you and we plan on spending the next hour with you. And I'm bringing you Mark Matthews from Stratford-on-Avon, which I am told is the home of Shakespeare, according to Mark anyway. So it is a famous place out there. And I also want to welcome Brooke, Mark's daughter. We had a couple firsts today, having some family watching here today. And so we're applying a lot of pressure. And I really appreciate Mark joining us. But if you weren't at one of our Tech Edges a couple of years, well, last year, Mark joined us there live in person here in Kansas, had the amazing Kansas experience. And he was one of our highly touted speakers that everybody wanted more of. And then they didn't really realize that Mark was from England, even though he had a strange accent. So it is very difficult for him to just come by and visit. But I'm sure that he would be willing to talk to you in the virtual world. But with that, I am turning it over to Mark. We will have questions. So please put your questions. We'll be addressing them on the end. We will not be interfering with Mark during the kickoff here, but at the end we will take your questions, even if it's just a little British English that we need help translating. I think we can probably get that done too. With that, all yours, Mark.
Yeah, hi Steve, thank you. Thanks guys. So as Steve said, my name's Mark Matthews. I've spent 31 years running an IT security and compliance company in the UK. 3 weeks ago, Steve called me of Next Tech and said, look, can you do a follow-up to the Chris Guy talk that you did Tech Edge last year, the one where I talked about how well, you guys call this a potato chip packet, but we call this a crisp packet, changed my life and my business. I spoke about how having great culture and vulnerability running throughout the business was what every business needed. I think Steve might have a link, or you might have had one sent to a recording of the talk I did similar to Kansas. I've got one that I did in London, so you can have that shared if you miss it. Because to be fair, great culture has never been needed as much as it is today. Hopefully you're here because you watched my video of me working from home, which we had great fun joking about at home, and where I was talking about the new norm of working from home and the issues that brings. I'll let you into a little secret. I'd much prefer to be there with you face to face. Even though it did last time I came over to Kansas for the week for Tech Edge, it took me 24 hours traveling door to door, which was very tiring. But to see all of you face to face and see the whites of your eyes was great. So I hate Zoom meetings. This is the first ever talk I've done on Zoom meetings, and yeah, I'm sure it'll go perfectly. But unfortunately, like working from home, this is what we find ourselves in now. This time, normally I talk about things of my running ATG, my business, and the problems of that for the last 31 years. This time I've had to do some research, and I've got to say I've been absolutely amazed by the findings that I've had. So I'm going to spend some time sharing with you, and just see what you think. Just remember though, I'm not an expert, I'm just a small business owner, and some of what I'm going to tell you, some of it's quite extreme of what I found out when I've been talking to business owners and employees. So, but I'll leave it up to you to make up your own mind of whether you think it's worth looking at or not, and what you take for the information I'm going to give you. But so I've thought long and hard about what I wanted you to take away from this talk. And what I want is employees and business owners to have a better understanding of each other, and to bring the working from home conversation to the forefront, to improve the trust of all of us between all parties, so employees, workers, etc., and owners. You might notice throughout the talk that trust or lack of trust is a recurring theme, and that came up throughout my findings. So let's start with a few research stories. And actually, before I just go into those, Steve just touched on it slightly, because when I stood on stage out in well, it wasn't in Hayes, but it was in Kansas to speak to you last time, is I noticed there's so many words that don't sort of translate very well. So if there are some, it's not just aluminum and aluminium as we call it, or jaguar and jaguar, tomato, pants, and all the other words, and there's trunk and boot of a car. So if there's any words that don't come across because I can't see you. I'm not in Kansas. I haven't picked up any of the lingo since I've been there, like I did a little bit. Put it in the notes afterwards, and I'm sure we'll be able to describe what the words are. So what I wanted to do is, first of all, I've got a few stories that I wanted to tell you of some of the, I put it out onto my communities on Facebook, on WhatsApp, and on LinkedIn for people to contact me if they had any work from home stories or anything that the boss has done or employees has done. And I've got some research stories, which you might have thought of these as an employee. You might think this is what the boss thinks of you, or as a boss, you might think that this is as your employee. But some of them actually are quite extreme, or I personally think they're quite extreme. So I'm going to start out with one that sort of gets everybody smiling or tutting. But I've heard of one owner that his staff were traveling to work from 8 till 9 o'clock, then working a day from 9 till 5, and then they were going home at 5 o'clock till 6 o'clock. So it's an hour travel. He's actually gone to them and says, actually, now you're not doing the travel because you're working from home. So I want you to work from 8 till 6. And one thing I forgot to say, all of these are true. People have said this. So a boss said that he wants his staff to now work 8 to 6 because they're not working from home. There's a story about a business owner who all of his staff had to work at home because in the UK, when we shut the country down, we all had to go and work from home unless you were a key worker. They were, I won't say what industry, and I'm going to try and not mention people's names because obviously some of them are quite extreme, like that last one. The boss had everybody work from home and then log into their computer in the office. What the boss, so they're running from their home computer, but they're actually running off their computer in their office. The boss went into the office and watched what they were doing on their computers. In the end of the second week, he sacked 3 people because he didn't like what they were or were not doing on their computers. That sort of shows he didn't have a lot of trust in his staff. A lot of people are speaking up in Zoom and team meetings, whatever you use, just so that other people know that they have, even though they have nothing to say. So people are going, yeah, no, commenting on things, just so the boss or their manager knows that they're actually on the call and are playing a part, even though really they've got nothing to say. There's one company that requires the whole business to be on Zoom for their whole time at work. So their screen would be divided by how many employees, and they're on Zoom 8 hours a day. And the owner has told them it's for the benefit of the employee so they can ask questions as they go. Obviously, that's not the case. Well, it doesn't seem it to me, but to that owner it did. It's so he can check up on what they're doing. Employees, there's one employee that was so bored of being on all the Zoom calls and the length that they were taking that they actually took their phone into the bathroom. I know, I'm sure you still call it the bathroom. Went and had a shower while on the call, finished while the call was still going. Had a shower, dried the hair, got ready, and the call was still talking about the same stuff that before the call. There's an employee who wants to gets paid mileage from home now. So they have their own car, they use it for company business. They normally would be paid mileage from work to wherever they go and see a customer. Now they want paying from home, and the owner disagreeing because, and quoting their employment contract, say, no, the place of work is at work. That's where I'm going to pay you the mileage from. Owner swearing about staff wanting expenses for heating and lighting, etc., and electricity. Now they're working from home. Now I'm going to come a bit more onto that one later because that leads me into a topic later that I want to discuss a bit further. So them were quite extreme examples, but I was given also lots of examples, but just from an employee's perspective. So I'm just going to go through those. Most employees seem to have an overriding sense of feeling that they're feeling invisible. Most do not miss the commute, sitting in traffic. You know, when I came out to Hayes, there was traffic out there. It's horrible sitting in that every morning in rush hour. They don't miss that. However, they seem to miss the thinking time that gave them when they were sitting in traffic. And when speaking to employees, it came across so much to me that there's a deep sense of responsibility to answer the phone anytime, whether they were on lunch or out of hours, they wanted to answer the phone because they thought that the boss might think that they're just playing Xbox all day or watching Jerry Springer or not working. They feel paranoid that the boss is tracking them. And I suppose those employees in the example that I just gave you, they probably should have been paranoid that the boss was looking at their computer at work. So they feel the need that they've got to be constantly on. The overriding examples I was giving, that they're working longer days, working through lunches, eating while they're working, again, because they don't want the boss to think they're lazy. And they are worried that in the UK, certainly, our furlough scheme that we had where the government paid up to 80% of our salaries while we were not working, that's come to an end now. So there's a lot of redundancies now. The owners of businesses have got to pay for their staff. And if they've lost business, etc. So lots of people are worried about being future redundancies. So they're now working, in effect, over and over and over to almost show to the boss, to prove to the boss that if there is future redundancies, look, please don't choose me because, I've been working hard all the time. To give an example from the only company I'm really going to mention today is Microsoft have just published a report that says half of their company instant messages were being sent between 6 p.m. and midnight. And I'd probably say that's a similar stat for most other companies. So Microsoft are seeing now that, the difference is most people are doing work. Microsoft are finding that most people are even working more hours for them. A lot of employees I've heard mention, I might as well stay in bed because nobody can see what I'm doing anyway, so they'll never know. Some employees, not everyone, they don't want you to turn they don't want to turn their camera on because they're too stressed. They've got children playing. There's dogs barking. They look a mess. The house looks a mess. They work from the bedroom because they don't have an office at home. So they don't want to turn the camera on. Also, they have suggested that working from home is now costing them for heating, lighting, electricity, and maybe the business should pay. Again, I'm going to come on to that later. So employees don't get it all their own way. So let's just give a few owners' perspectives. The underriding or overriding the example from owners is that a lot of them feel out of control because working from home has just been thrust on them. And this is really smaller businesses. The bigger businesses seem to have it a lot more now than the smaller ones. The smaller ones have had it thrust on them. They don't like the staff working from home because they can't see what they're up to. And I don't trust them to be doing the jobs. Again, trust mention. When staff were in the office, I knew what they were up to and I could see them. I could just walk up and check on them. I bet they're just watching TV all day. I bet they're still in bed. These are just a couple of the things that seem to be recurring. The employees think, that the owner thinks they're in bed, and the owners actually do think maybe they're in bed. And of course, this is not one owner. This is me speaking to a lot of owners and doing a fair bit of research. Some really worry about how we keep the company culture going because we're not all in the same building. So we can't go out go-karting or go to the pub or do any of the activities that we might do, do stuff for charity, etc., that would keep the company culture going because we're not in the same room. I've heard of one business owner saying that he's had employees say that they don't want to come back to work because they're worried about catching COVID. And actually, they see that actually if they come back to work with the worry, it will affect their mental health. But rather than the owner thinking, okay, I need to deal with that and let's have a conversation, their first thought was, actually, that's just an excuse that they don't want to be in the office, and that's what they're using. They're playing the mental health card. And this came up a lot, which is why I'm smiling. Employees just don't understand the pressure that I'm under being the boss. I haven't paid myself since blah, 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 because I have all the worry of being a business owner, and employees just don't get that. They just turn up to work, do their job, and they get paid whatever. That came up a couple of times, which I was quite surprised about. So my thoughts on so all those were just comments that I've heard. There's none of my thoughts in that. But my thoughts following my talk in Kansas about the right culture of being in the business was Trust is obviously a major factor when I spoke to business owner employees. Trust was noticeably present with those companies that defined and were living by their company values, which is what I spoke about when I spoke at Tech Edge last year in Kansas. Trust was also seen in abundance where the employee knew what good looked like for their job. So where the employee fitted the culture of the business, understood the direction of the business and where it was going, and knew the role that they played in the business of getting that business there, both the owner and employee naturally seemed happier and didn't see working from home as a threat to their long-term future of their job or their company, which is, that was quite a revelation for me. You know, I thought that was the case, but to hear the owners not moaning about employees or employees not moaning about owners was actually, when you dug into it, it was because their culture and values and vision of the company matched. I wanted to just touch briefly on the working from home and mental health issue, because it's talked about in the press here a bit, that, you know, it's that thing that's hidden there, that one day is going to, you know, when COVID's over, we've all got a vaccine for COVID, that one day might bite us in the backside because, you know, people are genuinely suffering. And for most of us working home, we call it in the UK the new norm. We aren't going back to how things were anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. So the feeling of stress, boredom, anxiety, and uncertainty is completely normal. The feeling of being isolated from other people and worried about your job, as I previously said, and worried about your health because, you know, I'm an asthma sufferer. Potentially, you know, asthma sufferers suffer from having COVID-19 more than somebody that's not an asthma sufferer. So I might be worried about that. And actually, you know, I also spoke when I came over to speak at Tech Edge about vulnerability. Well, I'm going to be vulnerable a bit here. Steve, who set us up, he called Steve Wright. He asked me to. We used to speak about once every 2 or 3 weeks. We chat about all sorts of things, especially after I came over to Kansas. He asked me to do a talk back in May, but I'd been working home from March and I wasn't feeling myself as an owner. You know, business, I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know how it was working. My customers, I'm in IT. Some of them were suffering because they were either in certain industries that COVID was hitting them quite hard. So I was a bit withdrawn. I was suffering from anxiety, etc. And I ignored Steve's calls. He asked me to speak. Can you give me a call? Let's discuss this. And I've just looked at my WhatsApps from it this afternoon, and he asked me 2 or 3 times, and I ignored it because I was sort of thinking, what does a little IT dealer from the UK, what's he got to give to a Tech Edge audience in the States? How can they relate to me? And, you know, I ignored his call. And it was only genuinely till about 3 weeks ago that Steve said, look, what you do and how you do it is needed now. Mark, you need to, you know, and he said this was just going to be a quick 15-minute thing. And of course, it's ended up not as that now because I've realised what a big subject it was. And I've got my mojo back and that's fine. But mental health just affects staff and business owners alike. So just some simple steps. And you know, I'm not an expert in working from home, but I'm also not an expert in mental health other than suffering a bit over the years as being an owner. But here's some just simple steps that I think you should look at taking, which is try and get into a routine. When your work day stop working, shut down, stop checking emails, focus on your home life. And at the end of the day, try and get some good sleep. Dedicate, if you can, an area of your home to work, however small that is. Working from bedrooms or on bed is not a good thing. You know, I did speak to a couple of people that they got up in the morning, they'd slept all night, their laptop was on top of their chest. They woke up, sorry, the laptop obviously wasn't on the chest when they slept, but their laptop, they got up, they put their laptop on the chest, checked their emails, they put their AirPods in, they then carried on working for the day, and they had the dinner in the bed. You just have to think about, you know, how much do we sweat of a night? And I'll leave you to work that out yourself. You don't really want to be working from bed. So try and dedicate an area of your home, however small, even if it's on the end of your dining table. Have virtual coffee breaks with your colleagues. You know, those water cooler moments that you used to have when you were in the office where you could speak to, John in accounts or Steve in tech support, and just have a chat about general life, how you're doing, etc. Take computer breaks. You've got to. You can't be sitting in a screen all day. It wasn't good for your health when you were in the office. It's not now you're at home trying to prove that you're doing all the work and you're working all hours God sends. So take some exercise. I know exercise is mentioned very much with mental health, but go and take some exercise. And if you're struggling, it's very, very, very important not to do what I did and bury my head in the sand for 3 months and ignore Steve. Go and speak to somebody. Admit that you need some help and start that conversation with somebody. If it's your manager, it's your boss, it's your partner, or even the doctor or a friend, just go and speak to somebody. So let's bring it back to some employee takeaways that I think from speaking to all these people that I've spoke to. And they were all from different industries that, and some of these fall in line with mental health, etc. But let's look at some employee takeaways. That we need to have a distinct line between home and work life. As we did pre-COVID, we got up in the morning, we had a shower, we ate breakfast, we got in our car, we drove to work. We were gearing ourselves up. Whether you hated the travel or not, you were getting yourself in a work mode. You walked through your company door, you logged into your computer. Let's see if we can get the similar sort of thing going at home. You know, get dressed smartly. You know, I know myself. I put my jogging bottoms on if I'm not from work and I'm not on any calls. Dress smartly, because once you feel you're in the work mood, you're gonna. I think the day will go better and you'll feel better about yourself. Make sure you eat your breakfast. Attempt to emulate your commute time. Now, obviously, you're not commuting, but maybe that did give you time to think. So go and sit quietly, or maybe do some personal development. Read a book, take a course. If it took you an hour or half hour to get to work, you could dedicate that time rather than just rocking up out of bed and starting work straight away. It's got to be better that you gear yourself up for the day-to-day work and then gear yourself down when you finish work at the end of the day. And I'll say it again, you know, I'm no expert in this. This is just what I see from my own business, but also the umpteen businesses I've spoke to or have contacted me over the last couple of weeks since they knew I was doing this talk. Not everybody has a home office, but try and set up an area in the house that you can regularly work to safely. You know, most people are on laptops, or if you're using a home computer, you've got a desktop. It doesn't take up a great deal of space, but see if you can dedicate an area. Again, take regular breaks from your screen, because it's not good staring at this screen all day for your eyes. Go for a walk, open the windows, let some fresh air in. Leave your desk to eat. Never eat lunch at your desk where your computer is. You need a break. Try and remember, these are employee takeaways. And lastly, I found a lot of people didn't know what good looked like for their job. Go and just ask what your boss or your manager, what good looked like for the job, so you know when you're working throughout the day if you're doing a good job or not. It just sounds something really simple that in some smaller businesses, the workers really genuinely didn't know what good looked like, so they were sort of overdoing work trying to find what good looked like for them. Now, owner takeaways. I know owners have got quite a bad rap on what I've just said, but you still have a responsibility to your employees, even though they're not working from home. You have a responsibility to provide what's needed for them to do the job safely. A chair, a webcam, a laptop, a phone, the lighting in the room, etc. Some staff love to work from home. And I got in early today so we could check this link, because of course, whenever you want a link to work, links don't work. And I'm actually I'm in work because I didn't trust my home internet connection. So that's a bit ironic that I'm talking about working from home and I've actually ended up coming into work because I've got a T1 line at work that I guarantee will be on all the time. I went round next door because I haven't seen my next door neighbour for the premises we're in. And I told him that I was doing this talk today. In fact, he knew I was doing it. And it sparked up such an emotive conversation with one of his employees and the owner of the business. He was basically saying, I don't want to come back to work. I'm happy and I believe I'm more productive at home. And the boss of the company wanted everybody back in work. And I think part of this me having this conversation is I want people to talk, and people don't seem to talk. You know, if my opinion is I want you back in work, that's what everybody's got to do. Well, no, that's not right. It's so if you don't have a company policy, have a conversation with your employees and see what best works for all. Because we're in the UK, we're having a thing called hybrid talked about, where you work at home some days and you work in the business some days. That might be you have home workers that actually just work at home. You have people that just work in the business, or a multitude of both. But unless you have that conversation, you're never going to know. I think owners would want their employees to work in excessive hours, especially small ones. But actually, if you do, you're not going to get the best out of them, and you're only going to burn them out. So we don't want that. So see what you can do to change that. Try and have your teams focused on the results of their job and the goals, not the hours they worked. Some people work earlier in the morning better. My MD for this business, he's up at he's working at 6 o'clock every day. Maybe he works from 6 till midday. Maybe some people get up at midday and work till late. But you need to have that conversation with them so you can work out what's better for them and the business. And obviously, if people are in customer faces roles, then that changes the aspects. I'm sort of talking about people that can do this as part of their day-to-day role. Make employees understand what good look like for their job. Make sure you define each role and discuss it with each employee so they and you know what's expected of them, so they're not working 14, 16-hour days hoping to impress you. Another one which came up with, there's a lot of people don't like having their webcam on. And I've been one of those where I just have my caricature on the chat. Make sure you just go and buy everybody a webcam and make sure it's on every call. And actually, it's not so you can check up on them and see what they're doing their job. It's so you as an owner, and these are owners' takeaways, can see what your employees are, their mannerisms on the call, and see how they're interacting with the call, so you can see if they need any help. Because actually, employees don't often ask for help, so you can see how their mannerisms are, how they're moving, how they're dressed, if they're, their hair's all over the place in the morning, they haven't got ready. You can see that. And you know what? That's how we build relationships. So ask them to have the webcam on every call, because it's not to check up on them, and make sure you're telling them it's not to check up on them. It's just so you can interact. It's now we're all wearing these face masks when we're out. You can't recognize friends down the road because you can't see them. We need to now, and I'm staring into my webcam, we need to see the whites of people's eyes so we can see and feel them. So get everybody to have their webcams on. And a lot of my staff, I think I had half of my company didn't have webcams at home. But since doing this, they've now all got webcams at home. So we have a daily huddle every morning at 9:34. They have the webcams on. And again, when I'm on it, and actually I'm only on one a week, I'm staring down the camera, I'm looking to the interaction of my employees, looking to spot if there's any problems that then I can go and speak to the employee about. Webcams and Zoom meetings, etc., are mainly used for talking about work. So if we go back to this water cooler and coffee machine type moments, as an owner, I see it as my responsibility to phone my staff up once a couple of weeks, once a week, whatever feels comfortable for you. And it can't be contrived, it's got to be genuine. And phone them up just to say hi, not to talk to them about work, but to discuss their partners, their children, their dog, what hobbies they're doing. It's not about time to talk about the KPIs. It's just to show you care and to build that relationship with them. And for those of you bosses out there that are thinking that sounds a load of rubbish and you still want to monitor your employees, and there's a lot of that out there. I see a lot of that on WhatsApp groups that I'm part of. Do you know a piece of software that my customer can monitor the particular employees because they don't trust them? And one actually took random screenshots throughout the day. I think you need to ask yourself of why you would want to do this. Why don't you trust your staff, and why would you think this is acceptable? Because I personally, and this is my opinion, I don't think that's acceptable. If you're employing the right people to do the right job and they know what good looks like, why would you need to monitor them throughout the day? We've got to trust now our culture and vision and values matched. Again, what I spoke about when I was at Tech Edge. Why would you think it's acceptable? So, and I've been chatting now for 30 minutes without a slide. and you're just staring at some British guy sitting in his office, I'm going to end with my conclusions. So from the research that I've done, my underlying feeling, and I can't stress this enough, is employees are working harder than they ever have under exceptional circumstances, which goes completely against what a lot, I don't mean all, but actually maybe I'll use the word some, bosses seem to think, especially when ones where the word trust was used and trust doesn't exist. The most successful companies that I've spoke about who had no issues, nothing to add to this talk other than everything was good, was the ones where the company values were embedded into every facet of their company. It seemed to me that larger companies seem to have this sorted a lot better than small. Small companies seem to have, they've had it forced on them. They didn't have work from home policies or procedures or equipment or employee support or HR, whereas the larger companies had all that. And they seem to be, it's sort of, yeah, so what, we're all working from home. Smaller companies seem definitely to be playing catch up. Now, I just wanted to cover the one sort of quite, well, actually, there's been a few contentious things, but it came up a few times about employees. Now they're working from home, winter's coming, maybe their gas, electricity, well, certainly their electricity bills are coming up, are going up because they're running a computer all week and all month. I'm not sure of the costs for doing that, but winter's coming, and we're going to have the heating on at home, which might then cost me more money. When I've spoke to some, actually this came up from a WhatsApp group that when employees were asking for it, that they wanted, I think it was £7 a week or $10. It might have been a month, $10 a month to pay for heating and electricity. My answer to that was, and they thought the business shouldn't be paying for that. My answer to that was, well, actually, if you paid for tea and coffee at home or lunches and things like that, well, why wouldn't you provide that as well? And their answer to that, or a lot of the answers, well, people are not traveling to and from work now, so they're saving that expense. And the reason sort of for this talk is, what works for me? I've actually, my employees came in a few weeks ago and they found tea and coffee and sugar on their desk for them to take home. Because my thought is that I would much prefer to own that conversation than actually have the employees discussing this behind the scenes in the WhatsApp group that you're not in because you're the owner or you're the manager. I would much prefer to own that conversation and go to them and go, look, I'm going to provide you with tea and coffee. I'm not sure we'd do it every month. I'm not sure they'll want it every month, but we're going to do that because we're thinking of you. We provided at work, we didn't at home. And the same with gas and electricity. Well, how much is it going to be? I don't know, because winter's not here yet. It might be a lot of money. And does the fact that you're not traveling to and from work, does that counter the fact that you're now spending what could be a fair amount of money heating your home? Because when you were at work, you didn't have the heating on. Now you're at home, you're going to have the heating on, or the electricity costs, etc., etc. I would much prefer to own that conversation now and maybe say to my employees, look, we're thinking about not paying you for gas and electricity at home, your heating or oil or whatever you're on, because you're saving it with work. You're saving it by not coming to and from work, which was at your expense. However, if you have, your bills start going through the roof, then look, we'll have a chat about it. But just to presume that we're not going to pay any gas and electricity or heating costs because they're traveling to and from work, I am not sure they cancel each other out. So own the conversation, because imagine how your employees will feel if you go to them and say, we are doing this. Wow. My guys know that we care for them now because we're having that conversation up front. And some of you might be there already, but from the conversation I've had with, over the last 3 weeks while I've been talking to people about this talk was, I'm not sure a lot of owners are having that sort of conversation with them. So cut your people some slack. Employees and owners, remember, there's a global health crisis going on outside, and the current climate is anxiety-inducing for all workers, including owners of business and workers of businesses. So cut each other some slack. remind employees that we're all living under exceptional circumstances. That means some things might and may have seemed unprofessional pre-COVID, such as the dog barking when you're on a Zoom call, the children shouting in the background, etc. So to me, it shows that you're human. If one of my children was to walk in now, we're human. And personally, I'm cool with that. So for me, that's my talk on working from home. I'm unsure because I can't see that screen now if there's any questions. And I know Steve was gonna pop back to the front now. So if there's anything else, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I've sparked a little interest in a discussion around what potentially is an awful boss, and for bosses, what employees in my world in the UK are thinking. So I hope you found that from use from a small business owner from the UK. Over to you, Steve.
Well, you can hear me, right, Mark?
I can hear you perfectly well.
That's the new thing. So there's some questions in here, and I'm going to actually ask Kevin to chime in when he gets a second on the questions. And before we get that, there's two things I want to cover. One, you kind of mentioned company culture and rolling into the future, and I'm kind of going to give a teaser to everybody on this call that in 2 weeks we are having another one of our great TechEd speakers. We're having Lee Rosenboom from the Great America group that came out and spoke to us the year before Mark presented, and he's going to talk about the culture and embedding culture from that physical environment into the virtual environment, because Great America had a fantastic culture, but it was very physically based. They had large office spaces with cubicles where everybody could see everybody could talk to everybody, to all of a sudden nobody could see anybody because that office environment was obviously horrendous for a COVID situation. And so he's going to talk to us about some of the things that they've done to move that culture. And he's going to be very vulnerable to your point, Mark, of what have they not done so well. And so expect that the teasers will start going out on that this afternoon. It's 2 weeks from today, same time, same channel and whatnot. So that's number one. Number two, I want to give a giveaway here to everybody that requested on the call. And, Mark and I were talking about turning the cameras on and why you want to do that. So I wrote a very brief article on, why you want to turn a camera on and what it's going to do to improve the relationships of the people that you work with. So you, to Mark's point, can look them in the eye and see the whites of their eyes. And so anybody that wants that will absolutely send that out. I think that's a great piece to maybe hand to the rest of your team, because I know that I have certain team members that hate the video piece. And I think the reason they don't like it isn't, look, I'm not that great looking guy. I don't like to show my picture either. But at least you can
don't put yourself down, Steve. You're gorgeous.
I don't have the hair. Trying to get there. Kevin, I saw at least one question across there. Will you trigger that question for me, please?
Sure. So the one question I saw come through: as a manager or supervisor, do you have tips on how to stay engaged with your team? And how do you walk the fine line between trust and making sure they stay on track?
Okay, you going to answer that, Steve, or am I answering?
Hey, you get the first try.
Yeah, I don't like this where you get questions that you don't know what they're going to be. So I think it comes back down to the conversation I had when I was out in Tech Edge first time, and that was it's about having employees that match the company values, that then understand the vision of the business and where the vision is going, and then what part they play in that vision. I said it a couple of times. I said what good looks like for their role. I think when employees, managers, owners know that, and it filters throughout the whole business, I think the business doesn't have a lot of the problems that can crop up. If I don't know what good looks like for my job, then it's very hard, and I don't know what impact that I play. I think the first thing to start would be to get the culture of the business correctly, and then have the employees understand the culture and the values and the vision of the business. I'm not sure if that answers your question fully, because there was a bit around about how managers keep managing the staff. What was the?
Yeah, I'll repeat that for you, Mark. So part one, as a manager or supervisor, do you have tips on how to stay engaged with your team?
Right. Okay.
And then part two,
Well,
like, how do you walk that line between trusting them, but also checking in enough to make sure that they're on track?
Well, of course, trusting them is a weird one because it comes up ever such a lot about not having trust with your team. But if the right people are employed that match the values of the business, you're not going to get anybody during the middle of the day not doing the job that they're paid to do. And if they understand what piece of the company and the job that they're doing and how they affect the direction of the business, then they're going to do that because everything sort of matches together. How you keep your business engaged, I think it's by having the camera on. It's by having regular calls, so a daily huddle where you're talking to them as if you're in the office about what issues they've got on that day, and if I can help you in your day, and understanding, seeing the whites of your employees' eyes because they've got a camera on and you can see them, because that's the only way you have to build that relationship now. And then afterwards, actually speaking to your employees, not outside of work, but in work, but asking them questions. Now, I actually have a spreadsheet that has all my employees' names, and then across the top of it, it has what their wife's called, what their dog's called, what the children's names are, what the wife works at, or actually, what the husband works at, etc., etc. A big matrix. So when I'm having a conversation with them, I can say, "Oh, how's Ted the dog? Because you had a problem with him last time." Because that's how we need to build relationships, and it's about relationships for me.
And Mark, I'm going to take you a little different direction on this. If I was going to,
I thought you might.
Well, part of it is, how do you address issues with team members? Because you're right, trust is absolutely key. And the first thing I have to look inside is why am I asking the question that I'm asking? Is it out of a lack of trust, or am I seeing the result that is not of the equivalence that I would expect, whatever that might be? And I lean on the great book of Radical Candor. I can't remember who wrote that. I'm sure Mark knows. But Radical Candor is a great book, and it talks about how you want to start working with every team member, not just bosses per se, but everybody, so that when you're communicating with them, you're able to call out the elephants in the room. And the specific example that I remember is, if you had a team member that walked into a meeting, literally in a physical environment, and their zipper was down, you would let them know their zipper's down. You may not go, "Hey, everybody, look at their zipper, it's down." Like, that wouldn't be appropriate. You don't do it in a public forum, but you're going to send them a quick message. "Hey, Mark, your zipper's down. You might want to get that taken care of." But it's almost as if you don't care if you don't point out the things that aren't going well. And that's where I think it comes into, is to point out team members that aren't performing where they need to be is a matter of caring. And by not telling them the things that aren't going well or that they need to work on, it's almost like you don't care for them. And that changed my perspective, because sometimes I didn't want to deal with the conflict. I didn't want to deal with the directness. And by able to get direct to it, it's showing you care. Now, again, if it's not coming out of a relationship of trust, not a good situation. But if you trust them and you don't tell them of situations that they need to improve, that's on you. That's where I come from on that, Mark.
Yeah, you're right. You just explained it. You just explained it a bit better than me.
All right, there we go. I see somebody put out there. Kim Scott, thank you so much. Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Thank you for posting that out there. One of my top books ever, for sure. I think I gave that one away. So
no, I just looked for it then on my desk, but I haven't got. I have read it a few years ago now, but good book.
All right, so I didn't see another question over here, but I'm going to challenge you, Mark. All right.
Great.
Okay. So we haven't rehearsed this, by the way. So Mark has.
No, you haven't. That's why I'm. Yeah.
Right. So you make this point of providing maybe the cost of electricity, the £7, or maybe the coffee or the tea in your case. For those kind of things. Here's my question that I'm ultimately going to ask you is, if I'm a business owner or director in a business, look, I still am paying for all this square footage that I'm still heating, that I'm still air conditioning, because either some of the team members are reporting there, or even if none of them are reporting there, I have all these costs.
Yeah.
like from that perspective, you know, how do you look at that from your perspective? You are the business owner. You know, you're still running all the square footage you were running back in March, yet you're still continuing to do these add-ons for your team members. How are you justifying that?
You know what? It's quite funny coming in the office for the first time today. We've had our office back open, I think, since I think it was August the 1st we came back to, you know, where we could have, you know, the UK is going through another bit of a lockdown at the moment, but the area we're in is we're allowed to work if you can get to work. So I've got some people that do not want to work from home for whatever reason. They don't like it, so they're in the office. And I actually come in today and my heating is on. I have one person downstairs in my tech room in a 6,000 square foot building, and I have the heating on, which, yeah, I might have to have a word about maybe turning off different zones in certain offices. But look, I'm not saying it's right or wrong for you to pay for heating and lighting and that at home. The reason that I said it was because I wanted you guys to own the conversation.
Meaning just be open about it and say,
be open about it, because there's two, you know, I've spoke to lots of owners and I've said, well, why wouldn't you provide tea and coffee? Because you provide tea and coffee now when they were in the office. Now they're at home and they've gone, not a chance. I won't actually tell you the words they said, but there was not a way they were going to do it, because my employees are not paying. Let's say if you're in London and you're paying £200 a month for your tube or your rail card to come into work, you're now not paying that. So, well, is that the owner's decision to sort of say that's what he's not going to do without consulting the employee? And to one particular person I was speaking to, I said, well, okay, so what about the person that comes into work on his cycle, that's not paying that? So now he's working from home. He didn't have the traveling to work costs, but he's now having to potentially pay 20, 30, 40, because I don't know how much, you know, it's going to cost people to heat their houses, but how does that work for him? And he went, and he didn't have an answer. And I think through this whole COVID thing and working from home I'm quite happy working from home and coming maybe into work twice a week. I've got guys that are in downstairs now, and I'm upstairs in my two-story building, that actually do not want to work from home. And then there's other members of staff that are going, you know what, I want to stay at home. I prefer it because I can take the kids to school. I can pick them up from work, but I'll have a shorter lunch. And you know what? That's cool. And what it's shown me is the fact that one thing is not right for every staff member. And for you as an owner to presume that it is, I think is a failing on your part. So have the conversation. Because if you don't, as I said, other people are going to be having the conversation, and it would almost be then they've all decided that you're the bad boss. They're going to come to you saying, you know, every staff member, almost like the union, is going to come to you and say, this is what we want, as opposed to you owning the conversation at the start. So I don't think there's no right or wrong. It's just own the conversation.
And I think it matters the situation too, right? Like we've had locations that we don't have anybody reporting to, and we made a decision to close down the physical space. And so there was benefit to us for team members that chose to work remotely. And I assume that when you evaluate your workspace long term, you may choose to have less of it. I mean, you may not, but it's all completely up to you, right? And in those savings maybe becomes the benefit to remote workers or not remote workers. And so I have a couple of the things that have shown up over here, Mark. One was Becky, our great friend up north. Becky pointed out that having personality tests and whatnot, and I'm going to call one out only because Mark has it behind him on his left. All right, there's the monkey. The other way. Yeah, there we go. The monkey there. So if you don't know,
that's not a monkey. That's a lion 12 and camel 5.
It is. Oh, it is? Okay, it looks like I couldn't tell. The Lion 12. So if you're not familiar with the Eagle Center for Leadership, Dr. Larry Little, he has a great personality test. It is free on the website. I apologize, I don't know the exact website, but didn't know I was going to be advertising it for Larry. But
if you sorry, Steve, if you search "Make a Difference" by Dr. Larry Little,
Yeah,
it'll come up.
and that's the book. Thank you, Becky. And it gives you personality traits. With Mark being a lion, meaning he's domineering, and then what was the other one? Camel.
I'm a camel. I'm 5 camel. Yeah.
Camel. And see, I'm a lion monkey. Not a big surprise there. And so it will define what each one of those animals mean. In fact, I've even seen it at companies where they put the animals on people's cubicles. They put it in their personality.
That's what it's there for me. It's there for me. It's on everybody's desk in the building. So we know then how, when we're speaking to somebody, how they're going to react to what we say. Because it's true. It works.
And specifically with us lions can be very problematic for company culture because we dominate. And knowing that you might be dealing with a turtle as one of the other animals, and you're going to cause the turtle to hide in a shell. So you want to make sure that you're appropriately communicating to those team members. So thank you for that from Becky. I wanted to have that. And then Michael has on here, as an employee, it's very that is very conscientious, but I've had a lot of difficulty staying focused while working from home. So many distractions in there, and I feel guilty about it. Any tips for not constantly getting distracted? Mark, I'm gonna give you a break. I'll cover this one first, and then I'll give you a chance to think about that. How about that?
Okay.
All right. So first of all, as a work from home worker myself, I did it Monday. I'm in the office today, obviously. I get distracted all the time. And here's my example. There's this little corgi that lives down the street that every day at 10 o'clock, he comes wandering through my yard and he's super happy. And like, I got to get up and watch what the corgi's doing. I have no idea where this dog lives. I've never seen it unless I work from home. And like, I'm totally enamored by what the corgi dog's doing. And early in the spring, the bunnies were out playing, and but here's my real thought. When you're in the office, I think you're constantly getting distracted also, whether it be the water cooler talk, whether it be somebody dropping by your office, whether it be all these distractions we have in the office. My question to you is, are you being distracted any more than you would have been in the office? Because I would suggest maybe less. And I'm almost saying embrace the distraction, because I think that you have to have those distractions sometimes to free your mind, be able to focus, because the statistics say, at least for webinars, you can only do 90 minutes at a time without completely zoning out. So give yourself that opportunity to take a break and be distracted. That way you can focus when you get to the tough stuff. I don't know, Mark, what do you think?
You know what, I mean, I'm in total agreement. I'm an owner, so I'm a lion, as you know, as we said, and so hopefully people will go and look at the book and understand what a lion is. We're a nightmare. Steve will know lions are an absolute pain in the backside. We cause havoc wherever we go, and we have sort of I've had to learn to control my lion, because I used to just upset everybody. You know what? I think don't beat yourself up. I genuinely could not find one person from speaking to, and I've spoke to lots and lots of people, that was actually underperforming. They were all doing more work than what they ever did when they were in the office. And maybe that's because of distractions that they had in the office. Maybe there was more. Just because you're sitting at your desk all day doesn't mean to say you're being productive. You sit at your desk all day and do nothing.
And to tail on that, Mark, you made the comment in your presentation that we feel obligated to take the phone call. And I definitely do. For whatever reason, in the office, I have no problem hitting do not disturb or, decline call or whatever it is. Like, I have zero problem with that. When I'm at home, that thing rings. Like, I've got to answer, whether it's video, whether it's audio, whatever it is. And I think we have to get comfortable enough in trusting ourselves to know that if you're working on that project, it's okay to hit decline and call that person back. You don't have to instantly chat them and say, hey, I'm doing this thing. It's okay. Know that the team trusts you enough that you'll get back to them when it's appropriate, because you wouldn't do it in the office. And that way you can be more focused on getting things done. And I struggle with that, Mark. If I'm working from home, I still feel like I have to take the call. I hate that. I think
everybody did that I spoke to. But I think I've come back to the thing, if you know what good looks like, and I'll use the word project there. If you know what good looks like for that project and what you've got to do on it, my sort of thoughts is the end goal is the project. I don't have to work 9-hour days or 10 or 12-hour days to do that project. The end goal is the project. So if you get distracted by the corgi walking past the house, so be it. You know, stop beating yourself up about it. What good looks like is the end project, not how you got to that project. I don't know if that makes sense, but there was definitely, and I see it in my house. I don't have many. I've got 3 children. I've only got 1 left at home, but I see it when I speak to them. They feel obligated to pick that phone up and make it look like they're working full on all the time, whereas they were comfortable in the office to have a walk around and go and chat to somebody. And go outside and, you know, some people smoke and go and have a cigarette outside. They don't, it's not how it is now. They're working from home because I don't know. And I haven't got to the actual bottom of why staff feel like that. It can only come back to trust.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I didn't want you to miss the comment from Andrew Cash, which comes from your side of the pond.
He does, Andrew. Hi, Andrew.
Yeah. He can help you with your heating situation, so feel free to reach out to him.
And he's not a heating engineer. He's not a heating engineer. He's an account manager for an IT company.
Yeah. Glad to have you here, Andrew. Kevin, I'm going to go back to you and make sure I didn't miss any questions here, but we're strolling. Sometimes it got going a little quickly there.
I think we're all caught up.
All right, Mark, do you have any final words for us?
No, other than the fact that I'm sorry that you've just have to listen to me for the last 40 minutes talking without any slides, because I thought, you know, slides would only have to be corny pictures of somebody lying in bed with a laptop, etc. So I chose not to do it with slides, which is the first time, and I hope it's been worthwhile, and I hope I get asked to come back and speak in Kansas at Tech Edge again, because it was one of the best experiences that I've ever had. So thank you guys for asking me.
I'm going to ask you to do a shameless plug here. You do have a website where you have some great content out there for people. Please plug your website. It's not your IT business, obviously. It's more in the consulting side, how you help people. If they reach, are you know, where maybe they can get a hold of you? They can obviously reach out.
Yeah, so you can email me at mark@crispleadership.com, and you can see my website and read some of the articles and see some of the other talks I've done, which is not only the one I did in Kansas a couple of years ago, but there's a number of talks I've done about problems of running a small business. And you can get that on www.crispleadership.com. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for that. And if you haven't seen his website, please go there. I enjoyed checking up with Mark. Follow his poor YouTube channel, because I was like number 8 on that. And we've got to give some love to Mark's YouTube channel. And so anyway, we appreciate you joining us, Mark. One final plug: 2 weeks from today, 10 o'clock, we have Lee coming back to talk to us about taking a great culture from a physical environment into a virtual environment. That will be Lee, a great trailer coming out like Mark's intro video. If you haven't seen Mark's intro video, I highly recommend it. And then we'll be covering that. Also, Kevin will be tracking anybody that wants the article on turning webcams on. Put us over here on the chat or send us a message. We'll make sure we get that out to you. And with that, we're going to close this down. We appreciate everybody attending and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, guys.